and Assalamualaikum. My name is Akmal Ali and I'm from class BA2425B. And for the individual assignment for subject FIN 657 Financial Ethics and Issues, the topic for my presentation that I'm going to conduct is the determinants of factors affecting inflation in Malaysia. Before I further proceed with my presentation, let's go through the scope of study first. So there are four key elements in the scope of study, and the first one is the definition of inflation. So in the definition, I'm going to explain what does inflation mean so that we can further understand in order for us to proceed to the next point, which is to identify the factors of inflation, and next is ways on how to overcome inflation, and lastly we'll jump to the conclusion. So ladies and gentlemen, what we have here, we have the picture of a cooking oil, we have the picture of chicken meat, and also packets of sugar. So what do you find familiar and similar regarding these three pictures? Yes, of course, these are the three basic products that we need at home every day in order for us to cook. In general, these are the basic products that most of us Malaysians consume every single day. And of course, we can identify inflation through the increase in the price of this product, and of course it is increasing right now and it is very bad for all of us, so we have to be very concerned regarding the price of this product. Okay, now ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the slide on the definition of inflation. And in economics, inflation is usually defined as the increase in price of goods and services in an economy. So there are three types of inflation, and I'm going to explain to you one by one. So the first type of inflation is called the demand pull inflation. The demand pull inflation occurs when there are too much money chasing too few goods, or in other words, we can say that it happened due to the shortage of supply. And the next type of inflation is called the cost push inflation. Cost push inflation occurs when the minimum wages of the public increases, and so the prices of goods and services need to increase too. And the last type of inflation is what we need to be very concerned about, because it is happening right now in our country, and it's called the built-in inflation. So built-in inflation is also referring to the wage price spiral. So it happened when the citizen of a country demanding from the government for a higher minimum wages in order for them to keep up with the cost of living. And this is what we are suffering right now. Our minimum wages isn't sufficient enough for us to keep surviving for our living. Based on the picture above, you can see the inflation rates of our neighboring countries. We have Thailand with 4.65%, we have Indonesia with 3.55%, Singapore 3.5%, and of course our country, which is the lowest amongst the four countries, which is at 3.2%. And of course, we should feel proud of our country for being able to maintain still the lowest inflation rates compared to Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore, despite the post-pandemic situation. If you think that our country is actually facing from even worse inflation compared to what happened in 1998, uh, please do take note that there are even other countries out there that are facing, economic crisis even worse than us. Besides Sri Lanka at 50.78%, and guess what? Lebanon is having their inflation rate at 201%. I have no idea right now on how the government are going to fix their country's economy. Now we have come to the slide on the factors of inflation that happen in Malaysia. So there are three main factors of inflation. So the first one is money supply, and the second one is unemployment rate, followed by exchange rate. So I will explain each of the factors of inflation that I've just stated just now on the next slide. Okay, now let's take a look at the first point on the factors of inflation, which is the money supply. First of all, increasing the money supply faster than the growth of the real output will cause inflation. This is because too much money is chasing the same number of goods, and this will cause firms to increase the prices of goods and services. And what we can relate regarding to the increase in money supply in Malaysia is that during the pandemic, the government had been releasing and creating too much financial assistance schemes such as Bantuan Berhati Rakyat, Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia, and so many more other bantuan, to help the public with their financial. And they do know that inflation is going to come after doing all that, but they had to do it in order to save life, to save the people from starvation. So the second factors of inflation in Malaysia is unemployment rate. The graph between unemployment rate and inflation is inversely proportional, and this means that if the unemployment rate decreases, inflation increases, and if the unemployment rate increases, then the inflation decreases. So relating to the unemployment rate in Malaysia, it's very hard, especially for a fresh graduate to find a job for themselves after graduating. Like especially in the year 2022, and even nowadays, even if you have a job, uh, you yourself won't be certain if it's going to last long, and that's how bad the unemployment rate in Malaysia is. Last but not least, on the factors of inflation in Malaysia is the increase in exchange rate. The increase in exchange rate would result into cheaper domestic goods for foreign consumers, and this would cause higher number of exports and total demands. An increase in exchange rate would result into a rise in inflation. And do take note that exchange rate increases due to a high number of our currency being traded outside of our country. And in order for us to reduce that, we need the trade to be happen inside of our country, which means we need more foreign direct investment. And I'm actually fascinated by the idea of China in attracting their local citizens into tourism in their own country, where they created cities like Venice and Paris for their local citizens, so that they don't have to travel outside of the country and make the exchange of their currency to happen outside of the country, and they can have vacation in their country instead, and this would support their local tourism. And in addition, I think that Malaysia should be triggered by our closest neighbor, which is Indonesia, especially last year when their president Jokowi implemented a policy to attract more foreign direct investment, and it actually works when their policy actually benefits the employer more than the employee. Amongst the companies that run away from our country and switch their factory to Indonesia is like Toyota, Hyundai, and Honda, and it was a huge loss for our country, and we need to find a more efficient and effective way to gain them back into our country. I would like to discuss on the ways on how we can overcome inflation in Malaysia. So the first way is price control. The government is responsible in controlling the price of domestic goods such as cooking oil, chicken, flour, and also sugar. So the government can set up a ceiling price so that nobody can manipulate or monopoly the price of these essential goods. And next is monetary policy. So through monetary policy, the government can reduce inflation by increasing the bank rates, sell securities, increasing the reserve ratios, and regulating customer credits. And last is freezing. What I mean by freezing is the government can freeze wages, incomes, dividend, bonus of the employees. This is a short-term strategy because if it's been implemented for too long, it would antagonize the employees in Malaysia. And of course, this is a good strategy because it helps the government to control the wages, and at the same time, it increases the productivity in our country. And yeah, it helps to reduce inflation also. Inflation is caused by the fall in aggregate supply equal to increase in aggregate demand. Inflation can be reduced by increasing the supply of goods and services and reducing money income at the same time. All in a nutshell, inflation will always be there, and there's no way for any country to avoid inflation from occurring in this country. It's just a matter of how good and how well a country is in managing its economy to maintain the inflation rate to be as low as possible. And I believe that if Malaysia's economy is being managed properly, and the right people is being put in the right place, that we can become a better country in terms of economy, and to become a giant in economy once again, like whom we used to be called in the year 1998, the Asian Tigers. So that's all from my presentation today. And last but not least, thank you to my lecturer, Madam Ellie, and my fellow friends, my fellow classmates, for giving me support and guidance in completing my assignments. Thank you very much.